The explosion near Saturn was visible from Earth even without telescopes. A new star appeared in the night sky and burned for 6 hours before fading away. When it was gone, so was the alien supply station and half of their fuel reserves. Ambassador Velthar stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the reports from Saturn. His officers moved nervously around him, afraid to speak. The destruction of the supply station was not just a military loss. It was something the hegemony had never experienced before. A successful surprise attack by a primitive species. How many ships did they use? Velthar asked. Our sensors detected only one small vessel, Ambassador, replied his tactical officer. It appears to have been a suicide attack. One ship destroyed our entire forward supply base? Yes, sir. The human ship somehow overloaded its reactor core at the moment of impact. The explosion was significant. Velthar turned away from the reports and looked out at Earth floating below them. The blue and green planet looked peaceful and innocent. But he was beginning to understand that looks could be deceiving. On Earth, the news of Captain Dongmin's successful mission spread quickly. People gathered in the streets and cheered. For the first time since the aliens arrived, humans felt hope. They had struck back. They had proven that the aliens were not invincible. In her laboratory, Dr. Hana Kim watched the celebration on her computer screen while she worked. She was happy about Captain Dongmin's success, but she knew the aliens would respond with anger. The countdown to their deadline was now less than 24 hours. Dr. Kim called her assistant, Jin Ho. The quantum cascade calculations are complete. We can begin the first phase whenever you give the order. Hana looked at the numbers on her screen. Everything was ready. The Prometheus protocol could be activated with the press of a button. Once started, it could not be stopped. The sun would become a weapon that would destroy everything within 50 light-years of Earth. Wait for my signal, she said. We need to time this perfectly. Above Earth's surface, something was happening that the aliens did not expect. Thousands of civilian ships were leaving the planet and heading toward the moon. These were not military vessels. They were cargo ships, passenger shuttles, mining craft, and even private yachts. But each one had been modified in the same way. Engineer Tae-Wan Choi stood in a converted warehouse outside Seoul, watching workers attach nuclear warheads to civilian spacecraft. The work was dangerous and had to be done quickly. They had less than a day to prepare as many ships as possible. His daughter, Mi-young, who was 23 and a trained pilot, walked up to him carrying a flight helmet. Dad, I'm taking the converted mining ship Bright Star. She's fueled and ready. Tae-Wan grabbed his daughter's arm. Mi-young, no. This is a suicide mission. These ships are designed to ram the alien vessels. No one is coming back. I know, Dad, but they want to take our children and turn them into slaves. I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I could have stopped them. Tae-Wan looked at his daughter's face and saw the same determination he had seen in his wife 20 years ago. Mi-young's mother had died fighting in the border conflicts with North Korea. She had died protecting what she believed in. I can't lose you too, he said quietly. Mi-young hugged her father. You're not losing me, Dad. You're setting me free. Similar conversations were happening all over Earth. Families said goodbye. Parents watched their adult children volunteer for missions that meant certain death. Wives and husbands kissed each other one last time before climbing into spacecraft loaded with explosives. The alien deadline was now 12 hours away. Commander Bo-Ra sat in the Lunar Defense Control Center, watching her screens fill with approaching human ships. She had been stationed on the moon for 2 years, managing the mining operations that provided fuel for Earth's space program. Now she was watching those same miners prepare to die as warriors. Commander, said her communications officer, we have over 3,000 ships in formation behind the moon. The alien fleet is maintaining position above Earth, but they're starting to move their defensive units into attack formation. Bo-Ra had served in the military for 15 years. She had seen combat during the regional conflicts in Asia, but she had never seen anything like this. Thousands of ordinary people, farmers and teachers and shopkeepers, preparing to fly directly into enemy fire with no hope of survival. Open a channel to all ships, she ordered. Channel open, Commander. Bo-Ra looked out at the Earth hanging in the black sky and thought about her nephew who lived in Daegu with her sister. He was only 5 years old. If the aliens won, he would be taken away and turned into something else. All pilots, this is Commander Bo-Ra. In 10 minutes, we begin the attack. Remember, we are not trying to win a battle. We are trying to send a message. We are telling the galaxy that some species cannot be conquered. Some people will choose death before slavery. The response that came back from 3,000 ships was simple. Understood, Commander. For Earth. As the human fleet prepared to attack, something unexpected happened. The alien ships above Earth began to move away from the planet. They pulled back to a safer distance, forming a defensive formation in high orbit. In the alien flagship, Velthar studied the tactical display with growing concern. His fleet was 10 times more powerful than anything the humans could build. His ships had weapons that could destroy cities and shields that could stop nuclear missiles, but the humans were not fighting like any enemy he had ever faced. Ambassador, said his intelligence officer, we've intercepted human communications. They're not trying to win. They're trying to take as many of our ships with them as possible when they die. Explain. Every human ship is loaded with nuclear weapons and set for collision courses with our vessels. They have no intention of surviving the battle. They want to die fighting us. Velthar had conquered 47 worlds for the hegemony. He had faced desperate enemies before. He had seen species fight to the last soldier. But he had never seen an entire civilization prepare for mutual destruction. Sir, said his tactical officer, we're also detecting massive energy buildup from the human star. Something is happening to their sun. Deep in her laboratory, Dr. Hana Kim initiated the first phase of the Prometheus protocol. Around the world, quantum field generators hidden in secret facilities began to activate. The plan was complex and dangerous. By creating specific quantum fields around Earth, they could influence the nuclear reactions in the sun's core. Phase 1 is active, reported her assistant Jinho. Quantum field generators are operating at full power. Good. Begin Phase 2 in 1 hour. That should give our pilots time to engage the enemy. Hana watched the energy readings on her computers. The sun was already beginning to change. Deep in its core, new types of nuclear reactions were starting. Reactions that would eventually turn the entire star into a directed energy weapon. The process was irreversible. Once Phase 2 began, nothing could stop the sun from becoming a weapon that would destroy everything in the solar system and beyond. Above Earth, the battle began. Fighter pilot Kyung-soo led the first wave of human ships out from behind the moon. His converted cargo ship Iron Thunder was loaded with 6 nuclear warheads and enough fuel for one last flight. Around him, hundreds of other ships spread out in attack formation. All units, this is Iron Thunder, he broadcast. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species in the galaxy that refuses to kneel, for every child that deserves to grow up free. The alien ships opened fire first. Beams of energy that could cut through mountains reached out toward the human fleet. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Dozens of human vessels died in the first few seconds of combat, but the survivors kept coming. Kyung-soo watched his friends die around him as he flew straight toward the largest alien ship. His controls were damaged and his engine was failing, but he was still alive. That was all that mattered for Earth. He screamed into his radio as the Iron Thunder smashed into the alien vessel's hull. The explosion that followed destroyed both ships completely. But it also proved something important. The alien vessels could be destroyed by determined humans with simple weapons and the will to die. The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships died by the hundreds, but each one took alien vessels with them. The space around Earth became a graveyard of burning metal and scattered debris. In the alien flagship, Velthar watched his fleet take losses unlike anything in hegemony history. His officers reported damage to over 30 major vessels and the complete destruction of 12 ships. Ambassador, said his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the human planet. Put it through. The image that appeared on the screen was President Soo-Jin Lee, broadcasting from her bunker beneath Seoul. She looked tired but determined. Ambassador Velthar, this is President Lee of Earth. Your ships are dying. Your supplies are destroyed. Your fleet is damaged. But this is only the beginning. Velthar leaned forward. What do you mean? Our sun is becoming a weapon, Ambassador. In 6 hours it will release enough energy to sterilize every world within 50 light-years of Earth. Your home worlds, your colonies, your entire regional command, all of it will burn. For the first time in his long career of conquest, Ambassador Velthar felt true fear. Captain Dongmin Park floated in zero gravity inside his ship, the Ghost of Incheon. Around him, his crew of 12 worked quietly at their stations. They were all volunteers. They all knew this mission would probably be their last. Dongmin was 35 years old and had been a pilot since he was 18. He had flown cargo runs to the Moon and Mars colonies. He had seen the beauty of space and the wonder of distant worlds. Now he was using his skills for something very different. His ship was small and fast, built for stealth missions. It was painted black and covered with special materials that made it nearly invisible to most sensors. The Ghost of Incheon had been designed to spy on enemy ships, not to attack them. But these were not normal times. "Captain, we're approaching Saturn's ring," said his co-pilot, Lieutenant Sumi. She was young, barely 25, with bright eyes and steady hands. Her family lived in Busan. If this mission failed, she would never see them again. "Good, take us into the debris field. Use the ice chunks for cover." The ship moved carefully between the floating rocks and ice that surrounded Saturn. In the distance, they could see their target, a massive alien supply station built on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It supplied fuel and weapons to the alien fleet. Back on Earth, the emergency session of the United Nations had been going on for 20 hours. Delegates from every country shouted at each other in the Great Assembly Hall. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight even though they knew they could not win. Admiral Jeho stood at the podium, his uniform crisp despite the long hours. He had been awake for 2 days straight, but his voice was still strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a choice to make. We can give up and hope the aliens keep their promises, or we can fight and probably die. But there is a third option." The hall grew quiet. Representatives leaned forward in their seats. "We can make sure that if we die, we take them with us." A delegate from Germany stood up. "Admiral, that's suicide. That's not a military strategy, that's madness." "Maybe it is," Jeho replied. "But sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane situation." President Soo-Jin Lee was in her secure bunker beneath Seoul. The bunker had been built during the war with North Korea, designed to protect the government if nuclear weapons were used. Now it protected her from aliens instead of human enemies. She sat at a large table surrounded by her top advisors. On the screens around them, they could see the alien ships still hanging over every major city on Earth. The ships had not moved in 24 hours. They were waiting. "Madam President," said her defense minister, Colonel Byung-ho, "we've been in contact with other world leaders. The Americans are preparing their nuclear arsenal, but their tests show the aliens can disable the missiles before they reach their targets." "What about our other options?" Soo-Jin asked. Her science advisor, Dr. So-Young Park, looked nervous. "Ma'am, Dr. Kim has been working on something. A theoretical weapon based on quantum physics, but the calculations show it would be extremely dangerous." "How dangerous?" "It could destroy our entire solar system, ma'am." Soo-Jin closed her eyes. When she was a child, her grandmother had told her stories about the Korean War, how ordinary people had faced impossible choices and somehow found the strength to survive. But this was different. This was not about one country or one war. This was about the future of all humanity. Deep underground in Seoul, Dr. Hana Kim worked frantically in her laboratory. Her computers ran calculations that would have taken years to complete just a few decades ago. Around her, a team of 12 scientists worked on different parts of the project. The Prometheus protocol was based on quantum mechanics and stellar physics. The idea was simple in theory but almost impossible in practice. By creating a specific type of quantum cascade reaction in the sun's core, they could turn Earth's star into a directed energy weapon. Dr. Taewon Choi stood beside her, reading the latest calculations. "Hana, these numbers, if this works, it will destroy everything within 50 light-years of Earth. That includes their homeworlds." "That includes everything." "I know," Hana said without looking up from her work. "That's the point. But it also means we all die." Hana stopped typing and looked at her old friend. They had studied together in university. They had discovered the secrets of space and time together. Now they were building a weapon that could end worlds. "Taewon, do you have children?" "You know I do. 2 daughters. What would happen to them if we surrender?" "The aliens said they would take all children for education and training." "What do you think that really means?" Taewon thought about his daughters, 8 and 10 years old. He thought about them growing up on alien worlds, forgetting their language, forgetting their parents, becoming something else entirely. "I understand," he said quietly. "How long do we need?" 48 hours minimum. Maybe less if we skip the safety test." "What safety test?" Hana laughed, but there was no humor in it. The test to make sure we don't accidentally blow up the sun before we're ready. In space near Saturn, Captain Dongmin and his crew prepared for their attack. They had studied the alien supply station for hours, looking for weak points. The station was protected by powerful energy shields and defense weapons, but it had one weakness: it was full of fuel. "Captain," said Engineer Wansik, "I've finished modifying our reactor core. When we hit the station, the explosion should be big enough to destroy their fuel supplies." "How big?" Dongmin asked. "Big enough to be seen from Earth, sir." Dongmin looked around at his crew. They were good people. They had families and dreams and lives they were giving up for this mission. But they had all volunteered when they learned what the aliens planned to do to Earth's children. "Everybody ready?" he asked. They nodded. Lieutenant Sumi started the engines. The ghost of Incheon moved out of the ice field and began its final approach to the alien station. On Earth, President Sujin Lee prepared to address the world. She stood in front of cameras in her bunker, wearing her best suit. Her speechwriters had prepared several different versions of what she might say. In the end, she threw them all away and decided to speak from her heart. "People of Earth," she began, "we have been given an impossible choice. We can surrender our freedom and our children, or we can die fighting for what we believe in." Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In homes and shelters and military bases, humans gathered around televisions and radios. "I have spoken with leaders from every nation," Sujin continued. "We are all in agreement. We will not surrender our children to aliens. We will not become slaves in our own solar system. If they want Earth, they will have to take it from our dead hands." In the alien command ship floating above Earth, Ambassador Velthar received reports from his intelligence officers. The humans were not reacting as expected. According to hegemony psychological profiles, primitive species always chose survival over honor. They begged and pleaded and eventually submitted. But the humans were doing something different. Instead of breaking apart into panic and chaos, they were organizing. Instead of fighting each other, they were working together. Instead of begging for mercy, they were building weapons. "Commander," said one of his officers, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from several human installations. It appears they're attempting to create some kind of weapon." Velthar looked at the data with interest. "What kind of weapon could they possibly build that would threaten us?" "Unknown, sir. But the energy readings are consistent with quantum manipulation technology." For the first time since arriving at Earth, Velthar felt a small touch of concern. The hegemony had never encountered a species that had discovered quantum weapons while still being confined to one star system. Most species needed hundreds of years and access to alien technology to reach that level. "Increase monitoring of all human installations," he ordered, "and prepare the fleet for possible early action." Far away near Saturn, Captain Dongmin's ship raced toward the alien supply station. Alarms were ringing on the station now. The aliens had detected the small human ship, but it was too late to stop it. "Impact in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Sumi. Dongmin activated the ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Dongmin Park of the Korean Space Defense Force. We are free humans and we choose to die free. Remember us." The ghost of Incheon struck the alien station at nearly the speed of light. The explosion that followed lit up the entire Saturn system like a new sun. The morning sky over Seoul changed forever when the shadow fell across the city. It was not a cloud or storm that blocked the sun. It was something much worse, something that had never been seen before on Earth. A massive alien ship hung in the sky above the planet. It was so large that it covered entire countries when it moved. The ship was black and covered with strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. People all over the world stopped what they were doing and stared up at the sky in fear. Admiral Jae-ho stood on the balcony of the Korean Space Defense Force headquarters. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of watching the stars. He had served in the military for 30 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His hands shook as he held his binoculars and studied the alien vessel. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the world," said his aide, Captain Minho. "Similar ships have appeared over every major city on Earth. Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, they're everywhere." Jae-ho lowered his binoculars and looked at the young captain. "How many ships total?" "Over 200 confirmed, sir. Maybe more. Our satellites went dark 3 hours ago, so we can't get an exact count." Inside the command center, alarms were ringing constantly. Officers ran between computer stations trying to make sense of what was happening. All of Earth's defense systems had been shut down in minutes. Every nuclear missile, every satellite weapon, every defense grid, all of it was useless now. Dr. Hana Kim sat in her laboratory deep underground in Seoul. She was one of the smartest people on Earth, a physicist who studied the deepest secrets of the universe. Her lab was filled with computers and strange machines that most people could not understand. But right now, she was not thinking about science. She was thinking about her daughter who lived in Busan with her grandmother. The screens around her showed the same image over and over. Alien ships floating over human cities like death coming from the sky. Hana had always wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now she had her answer and she wished she could take it back. Her phone rang. It was her research partner, Dr. Taewon Choi. "Hana, are you watching the news?" Taewon's voice was shaking. "Yes, I'm watching." "Taewon, this changes everything. All our research, all our theories about space travel and alien life, and they're here. What do you think they want?" Hana looked at the classified files on her desk. For months, she had been working on a secret project for the government, something that could be used as a weapon if Earth was ever attacked. She had hoped it would never be needed. "I don't know what they want," she said quietly, "but I know we need to be ready for anything." Around the world, people gathered in their homes, in churches, in public squares. They watched their televisions and phones, waiting for news, waiting for answers. Children cried. Adults tried to be brave, but failed. Everyone knew that life on Earth had just changed forever. In New York, the United Nations building was surrounded by soldiers and emergency vehicles. Inside, delegates from every country on Earth had gathered for an emergency meeting. They argued and shouted at each other in different languages, but none of them had any real answers. President Soo Jin-lee of South Korea sat in her office in the Blue House, staring at reports from her military commanders. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but those who knew her understood that she was as strong as steel. She had led her country through many difficult times, but this was different. This was not a problem that could be solved with diplomacy or economics. Her phone rang. It was the American president. "Soo Jin, are you seeing this?" "Yes, Mr. President, we're seeing it. My military advisors are telling me our weapons won't work against them. They've somehow disabled everything we have. What are your people saying?" President Lee looked out her window at the alien ship floating over Seoul. "My scientists are studying the situation, but I think we need to prepare for the worst." Then it happened. Every television, every radio, every phone and computer on Earth suddenly showed the same thing. An alien face appeared on every screen. It was tall and thin, with skin like gray metal and eyes that glowed with cold light. When it spoke, the words came in perfect English, but somehow everyone on Earth heard it in their own language. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am Ambassador Velthar of the Galactic Hegemony. We have come to your world to bring you into our empire. For too long, you have been alone in the darkness of space. Now you will join the family of civilized worlds." The alien's voice was calm, but there was something terrible underneath it, something that made people's skin crawl and their hearts beat faster. "You have 72 hours to surrender your planet to hegemony rule. Your governments will be dissolved. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your children will be taken to hegemony worlds for proper education and training. Your adults will be assigned work positions to help the empire grow stronger." President Lee felt her blood turn to ice. They wanted to take the children. They wanted to break apart every family on Earth and scatter them across the galaxy. "If you choose to resist," Velthar continued, "your planet will be destroyed completely. Every man, woman, and child will die. Your cities will burn. Your oceans will boil. Nothing will remain of your species but dust and memory." The alien face disappeared from the screens. For a moment, there was silence all over the Earth. Then the screaming began. In Seoul, Admiral Jae-ho walked back into the command center. His officers looked at him with desperate eyes, waiting for orders, waiting for hope. "Sir, what are our orders?" asked Captain Minho. Jae-ho looked around the room at the young men and women who had sworn to protect their country. They were brave, but their weapons were useless now. Their ships and missiles meant nothing against the alien technology. "Get me a secure line to the UN Emergency Council," he said. "And get me everything we have on our most classified research projects." "Sir? Which projects specifically?" Jae-ho thought about Dr. Hana Kim and her secret work. He thought about the theoretical weapons that existed only on paper and in the minds of Earth's smartest scientists. He thought about the choices that no sane person should ever have to make. All of them, Captain. Get me everything. If they want to play this game, they need to understand something about human beings. What's that, sir? Admiral Jeho looked up at the ceiling, imagining the alien ship floating far above them in the darkness of space. They need to understand that some prices are too high to pay, and some people would rather die free than live as slaves. Dr. Hana Kim sat in her underground lab, pulling up files that carried the highest security classifications. Her fingers moved across the keyboard as she opened documents marked with warnings about weapons that could crack planets and burn stars. For the first time in her life, she hoped she was smart enough to build something terrible. 72 hours. The countdown had begun. Ambassador Velthar stared at the human president on his screen, trying to understand what she had just said. In his 300 years of life, he had conquered dozens of worlds for the hegemony. He had seen desperate species try many things. Biological weapons, nuclear attacks, even attempts to destroy their own planets rather than surrender. But no species had ever tried to turn their star into a weapon. You're lying, he said. No primitive species has that technology. President Sujin Lee smiled, but it was not a happy smile. You're right, Ambassador. Yesterday we didn't have that technology. But you gave us 72 hours to prepare. We used every second of it. The transmission ended, leaving Velthar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers worked frantically at their stations, trying to confirm what the human had claimed. Ambassador, called his science officer, we're detecting massive quantum field distortions around the human star. The energy patterns are unprecedented. Can they really weaponize their sun? In theory, yes. If they can create a quantum cascade in the stellar core, they could turn the star into a directed energy weapon. But the technology required should be beyond their capabilities. Velthar looked out at Earth, floating like a blue jewel against the darkness. The planet looked so peaceful, so harmless. How had he so badly misjudged this species? On Earth, Admiral Jeho stood on the bridge of his flagship, Soul's Revenge. The ship was not built for combat against alien technology. It was an old vessel, designed for missions to Mars and the asteroid belt. But it had been retrofitted with every weapon Earth could provide. Around him, his crew prepared for what they all knew would be their final mission. The Soul's Revenge was going to ram the alien command ship directly. It was a desperate plan, but it might give the other human ships a chance to do more damage. Admiral, said his communications officer, we're receiving a message from Dr. Kim's laboratory. The Prometheus protocol has entered Phase 2. Jeho nodded. Phase 2 meant there was no going back. The sun was now committed to becoming a weapon. In less than 4 hours, it would release enough energy to destroy everything within 50 light-years of Earth. Send a message to all remaining human ships, Jeho ordered. Tell them we have 4 hours to make this count. Every alien ship we destroy now is one less ship that might escape to threaten other worlds. His first officer, Commander Yunji, looked at him with worried eyes. Sir, what about evacuation? Some of our people might be able to reach the outer system before— No, Jeho said firmly. Everyone stays. Everyone fights. That's what we decided, and that's what we're going to do. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Hana Kim watched the readings from the sun with growing amazement and terror. The quantum cascade was working exactly as her calculations had predicted. The star's core was changing, preparing to release energy in ways that had never been seen before. Dr. Kim, said her assistant Jinho, the energy output is increasing faster than expected. We may have less than 4 hours. How much less? Maybe 3 hours. The cascade reaction is accelerating. Hana looked at the numbers on her screen and felt a mixture of pride and horror. She had created something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. But she had also doomed every living thing in the solar system. Her phone rang. It was her daughter calling from Busan. Mom, are you okay? The news says— They say the sun is going to explode. Not explode, sweetheart, transform. It's going to become something else. Are you safe in your laboratory? Hana looked around at the concrete walls that surrounded her, knowing they would provide no protection from what was coming. I'm as safe as anyone can be right now. Mom, I'm scared. I know, honey. I'm scared too. But we're doing the right thing. We're making sure that no other species will have to make the choice we made. Above Earth's surface, the battle continued with desperate intensity. Human ships threw themselves at the alien fleet like angry wasps attacking a giant. Each attack cost human lives, but each attack also damaged the alien ships. Captain Sung-ho piloted his converted passenger shuttle, New Dawn, toward a massive alien destroyer. His ship had once carried tourists to the moon for vacation trips. Now it carried 12 nuclear warheads and a crew of 6 volunteers. New Dawn to all human vessels, he broadcast, "We're going for the big one. Cover us if you can." Around him, other human ships moved to intercept the alien fighters that were trying to stop his attack. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes as human pilots sacrificed themselves to keep the New Dawn flying toward its target. "Captain," called his gunner, Lieutenant Haewon, "alien fighters closing fast. We're not going to make it." Sung-ho looked at his navigation display. They were still 2,000 kilometers from the alien ship. At their current speed, they would be destroyed long before they could ram their target. "All crew to escape pods," he ordered. "I'll take her in alone." "No, sir," Haewon replied. "We volunteered together. We finish this together." The crew of the New Dawn stayed at their stations as the ship flew through a storm of alien weapons fire. The hull was damaged and the engines were failing, but they kept flying. When the New Dawn finally struck the alien destroyer, the explosion was so bright it could be seen from the surface of Earth. In the alien flagship, Velthar received reports of more losses. His fleet was being torn apart by human suicide attacks. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by converted civilian vessels piloted by ordinary humans. "Ambassador," said his tactical officer, "we've lost 47 ships. Our combat effectiveness is down to 60%. How is that possible? These humans have no military technology. Their weapons are primitive." "Sir, they don't need advanced weapons. They're using their ships as guided missiles. Every human vessel is a potential bomb." Velthar realized he was facing something completely outside his experience. The Hegemony's Conquest Manual had strategies for dealing with military resistance, civilian uprisings, and even planetary suicide weapons. But there was no strategy for dealing with an entire species that chose mutual annihilation over surrender. "Begin fleet withdrawal," he ordered. "Pull back to minimum safe distance from their star." "Sir, if we withdraw now, we'll be admitting defeat to a primitive world. The Hegemony has never retreated from such a species. The Hegemony has never faced a species willing to destroy their own star," Velthar replied. But even as the alien ships began to pull back, more human vessels emerged from behind the Moon and Mars. "Commander," Bora had organized a second wave of attacks using mining ships from the asteroid, belt and cargo vessels. From the outer system, "All human ships, this is Commander Bora," she broadcast from her base on the Moon. "The aliens are trying to retreat. Don't let them escape. Every ship that gets away will report back to their empire. They'll come back with bigger fleets and more weapons." The human ships responded by attacking with even more desperation. They knew they were all going to die when the sun became a weapon. But they wanted to take as many alien ships with them as possible. Admiral Jeho watched the battle from the bridge of Soul's Revenge and knew the time had come for his final move. The alien command ship was protected by layers of smaller vessels and defensive weapons, but it was still vulnerable to a direct attack. "All stations, prepare for ramming speed," he ordered. His crew moved quickly to their positions. They were all experienced officers who had served together for many years. They trusted each other completely, and they trusted their admiral to lead them to a good death. "Admiral," said Commander Yoonji, "it's been an honor serving with you." "The honor has been mine, Commander. Send my final message to Earth Command." The Soul's Revenge accelerated toward the alien flagship at maximum speed. Around the ship, human fighters engaged the alien defenders, trying to clear a path for the Admiral's attack. "This is Admiral Jeho to all human forces," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Remember this day, aliens. Remember that humanity chose to burn rather than bow. Remember that some species cannot be conquered." The Soul's Revenge smashed into the alien flagship with the force of a small asteroid. Both ships disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the space around Earth like a second sun. When the explosion faded, the alien command structure was in chaos. With their flagship destroyed and their commander dead, the remaining alien ships began to scatter. But it was too late for escape. The sun was entering the final phase of its transformation. In less than an hour, it would release enough energy to sterilize everything within 50 light-years of Earth. Dr. Hana Kim sat in her laboratory, watching the final countdown on her computers. Around her, her team worked to make sure the stellar weapon would function exactly as designed. "Dr. Kim," said Jin-Ho, "we're receiving surrender offers from the remaining alien ships. They want to negotiate." Hana looked at her screens, showing the sun's core as it prepared to release unimaginable amounts of energy. "It's too late for negotiations. The cascade reaction has passed the point of no return. Should I respond to their messages?" Hana thought about the alien demand that Earth surrender its children. She thought about the billions of humans who had chosen death over slavery. She thought about the message this would send to every other species in the galaxy. Send them this. Humanity's gift to the galaxy is this lesson: some species cannot be conquered. 3 years had passed since the day the humans turned their sun into a weapon. 3 years since an entire species chose death over slavery. The galaxy had not forgotten. Supreme Counselor Vexathan sat in his private chambers aboard the Hegemony Council ship Eternal Judgment, reading classified reports that made his hands shake. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for what the humans had done. The reports covered his desk like leaves from a dying tree. Economic analysis showing the collapse of 3 hegemony sectors. Military assessments describing rebellion on 17 worlds. Psychological profiles of enslaved species who now whispered about something called the human way. A soft chime announced a visitor. Science Officer Kyle Vor entered the chamber, carrying yet another datapad filled with disturbing information. Kilvor had been one of the few survivors of the human attack, rescued from a damaged ship by a hegemony patrol just hours before the human star weapon activated. "Counselor," Kyle Vor said, his voice still carrying the fear that had lived in him since that terrible day. "I have the final analysis of the Sol incident." Vexthan looked up from his reports. "Tell me something I want to hear for once." "I'm afraid that won't be possible, sir. The situation is worse than we initially assessed." Kyle Vor activated a holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked worlds where rebellion was spreading. There were far too many red dots. The humans destroyed themselves and our entire 4th Fleet, including Admiral Velthar's flagship. But that was only the beginning of our problems. Word of their defiance has spread to every corner of the galaxy. How is that possible? We control all major communication networks. The story spread through the slave populations, sir. It passed from world to world through whispers and secret messages. The enslaved species are calling it the day the humans chose fire. Vexthon studied the holographic display with growing alarm. The red dots seemed to pulse like infected wounds across the galaxy. What exactly are these rebellions doing? At first they were simple uprisings. Workers refusing to work, protests in the streets, minor acts of sabotage. But it's evolving, sir. 3 months ago, the slave population on Kepler 442b managed to destroy our mining operations there. They used suicide tactics similar to what the humans employed. Suicide tactics? Yes, sir. Instead of trying to escape or hide, they chose to die fighting. They destroyed our equipment and killed themselves rather than continue living as slaves. We lost an entire planet's worth of mineral production. Vexton closed his eyes and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their system of conquest and enslavement had been perfect. Worlds would resist for a while, then surrender when faced with overwhelming force. It had always worked, until the humans. "Show me the psychological analysis," Vexthon ordered. Kyle Vor changed the holographic display to show behavioral patterns across different species. "Sir, the humans have introduced something new into the galactic consciousness. They've proven that a species can choose complete extinction over submission. This idea is spreading like a virus. But most species have a survival instinct. They want to live. Yes, sir. But the humans have shown that there are things more important than survival. The enslaved populations are beginning to believe that freedom is worth any price. Even death." On the distant world of Kepler 442b, Jong-Soo Kim stood before a gathering of 200 aliens from 12 different species. He was one of only 3,000 humans who had been off-world when Earth died, scattered across the galaxy as diplomats, scientists, and traders. Now he was something else entirely. He was a symbol. Jong-Soo was 45 years old with gray in his hair and scars from 3 years of fighting the hegemony. His left arm had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic after a battle on Proxima Centauri. but his eyes still burned with the same fire that had consumed Earth. "My friends," he said in the common galactic language, 3 years ago, my people faced an impossible choice: submit to slavery or die fighting. You know what they chose." The aliens in the audience listened carefully. They were rebels and freedom fighters from across this sector of the galaxy. Some had been slaves for generations. Others had watched their worlds fall to hegemony conquest. All of them had heard the story of the humans. "The hegemony tells you that resistance is useless," Jiangsu continued. "They say their technology is too advanced, their fleets too powerful, their empire too vast to defeat. They want you to believe that survival requires submission." A tall, insect-like alien from the Vega system raised one of its forearms. "But human Jiangsu, your people are all dead. How is that victory?" Jiangsu smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the alien step backward. "My friend, death is not defeat if it serves a greater purpose. Earth died, yes, but Earth's death broke something that could never be repaired." He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas of rebellion, yellow zones marked areas of unrest, and green zones marked areas still under complete hegemony control. There was very little green left. Look at this map. 3 years ago, the entire galaxy was green. The hegemony controlled everything. Now look at it. My people died, but their death lit a fire that is burning across 100 worlds. Another alien, this one a water-breathing species from the Tau Ceti system, spoke up. "The hegemony still has thousands of ships. They still have planet-killing weapons. How can we fight such power?" Jiangsu looked around the room at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. They were all different. Some had fur, others had scales. Some breathed air while others breathed methane. But they all had the same look in their eyes. The look of people who had decided they would rather die free than live as slaves. "We fight the same way humans fought," he said. "Not to win, but to make victory too expensive for them to afford." Meanwhile, in the deepest archives of the hegemony capital world, new files were being created. The bureaucrats who managed the Empire's vast databases worked carefully to document what they were calling the human phenomenon. Classification: extinction class resistant species, approach with extreme caution. Notes: species demonstrated willingness to commit complete planetary suicide rather than accept subjugation. Psychological warfare tactics ineffective. Standard conquest protocols inadequate. Recommend avoiding contact with similar species. Warning: exposure to human resistance concepts may cause psychological contamination in enslaved populations. Stories of human defiance should be suppressed at all costs, but it was too late for suppression. The story had spread too far and taken root too deeply. On 17 different worlds, enslaved populations had begun to organize. They met in secret, planning acts of resistance that would cripple hegemony operations. They no longer tried to escape or hide. Instead, they planned to die fighting, taking as much hegemony equipment and personnel with them as possible. The pattern was always the same. A small group would attack a critical installation, a power plant, a communication center, a weapons depot. They would fight until they were killed or captured. Then they would activate hidden explosives, destroying themselves and their target. The hegemony called it madness. The rebels called it the human way. Back on the council ship, Vexthon received his daily briefing from the intelligence division. The news was consistently bad. "Counselor, we've lost contact with 3 more worlds in the Orion sector. The rebel groups there have adopted human-style suicide tactics. They're destroying our infrastructure faster than we can rebuild it. What about our psychological warfare specialists? Can't they break these rebellions?" "Sir, we've discovered something troubling. The human concept of choosing death over dishonor appears to be psychologically contagious. Species that have never shown this behavior before are beginning to adopt it after exposure to human stories." Vexthon stood up and walked to the large window that showed the galaxy stretching out in all directions. Somewhere out there, on hundreds of worlds, beings were choosing to die rather than serve the hegemony. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years was cracking like ice in spring. "How many humans are still alive?" he asked. "Approximately 3,000 scattered across the galaxy, sir. Most are involved in rebel activities. 3,000 humans are destroying our empire." "No, sir. 3,000 humans are spreading the story of what their species did. That story is destroying our empire." Vexthon turned away from the window and made a decision that would have been unthinkable just 3 years ago. Draft a new imperial policy. Human survivors are to be approached with offers of negotiation, not force. Any world that adopts human-style resistance tactics is to be abandoned rather than conquered. The cost of fighting them is too high. Sir, this is unprecedented. The hegemony has never retreated from primitive species before. The hegemony has never faced anything like this before. On Kepler 442b, Yongsu Kim finished his speech to the rebel gathering. Around him, aliens from across the galaxy prepared to return to their homeworlds and spread the message further. Remember, he told them, the goal is not victory in battle.